Hey everyone, welcome to the Oasis Podcast. I'm your host, Miss AJ. Thanks for tuning in. An oasis is something that provides refuge, relief, or a pleasant contrast, and that is exactly what you will find tuning into the Oasis Podcast. This is a space where I and special guests will be cultivating intentional and honest conversations about life's journey. Subscribe everywhere you listen to podcasts and watch us on YouTube now. Hey y'all, welcome back to the Oasis Podcast. Thank you for joining me again on another episode. And today's episode is things I've learned to be true. We're going to be talking about boundaries because I feel like as a woman, because that's the only perspective I know, I feel like boundaries are really something that's integral for our relationships. And that's across the board, intimate relationships as well as business relationships. And I want to really address that and talk about how keeping those boundaries and your standards are integral in who you are and how you maneuver the world. But to start off the episode, I want to start off with one of my favorite books until today. I get a lot of reads out of here. I use this book very much so. And I want to start off the episode with one of the passages that I read recently. And it starts out by saying, "It is for your own good that you must ask for what you need up front. It may make you a little uncomfortable at first. In the end, it will save you a lot of grief. You will learn that your needs are important. You will learn how to let people support and assist you. You will learn that you don't have to muddle through without the things that are necessary. To do that makes you bitter, which doesn't benefit anyone." So I read this the other day and I felt like, wow, like this is on point. Like I have had some interesting experiences these past few months, home buying, which I'll give you guys another update on that hopefully very soon, and just navigating different relationships. And I realized, and it made me just sit down and really process how I've been upholding my boundaries. And I realized that in this healing journey, it's sometimes for me, sometimes very difficult to know when to keep those boundaries up as a form of no. The difficulty comes for me with the boundaries when I'm trying to decide if the boundary is something that's necessary in a particular situation, because I don't know if it's a trauma response and that's making me want to, put up a boundary, or if it's necessary to keep my healing. And that's what I've been finding has been difficult. And as I sat back recently and looked over the past few months about how I've been handling keeping my boundaries up, I have not been doing a good job of it. And I can own up to that. I'm not gonna sit here and blame other people because people are gonna people, right? People gonna do what they do. But it's up to you to show people how to treat you. It's up to you to show people how to love you. And boundaries help you accomplish just that. And so I realized in me trying to be hyper focused on not reacting in an old way that I haven't enforced my boundaries in the ways that I needed to enforce them. And that essentially left me pissed off. Like I was pissed, like mad. In so many different ways for so many different reasons, but they all had to do with, at the end of the day, me not enforcing my boundaries and me not speaking up about what my standards are and moving and navigating from that space. And so, of course, these are how I usually have these things I learned to be true episodes. I wanted to share what I learned so that maybe it can help someone else who have been struggling with that or maybe in the future might struggle with it. You can have this, I guess, to refer to. I feel essentially that being a woman, it's difficult, I think, to really uphold your boundaries. Because when you are stern, when you are sticking to your guns, you're viewed as difficult. You're viewed as trouble. You're viewed as too aggressive. And I personally struggle with that because out the gate, I don't have to say nothing to nobody. I walk into a room and people
automatically have this idea of me of being, oh, who she thinks she is. Oh, you know what I mean? That I have a look on my face or how I carry myself. And I've been told this over years and years and years when I could be walking in the room thinking about cotton candy. Like, I'm not even thinking about y'all, but it comes off that way. And so I've been vigilant, I guess you can say, about how I present. And that for me ties into my boundaries and my standards at times, right? Sometimes I can be really, look, this is what it is. This is what it ain't. And I am not wavering. But more recently, you know, again, in healing, in going through therapy and being more vulnerable, I've been trying to navigate that space of being more open and vulnerable, but also not letting people fuck with me, right? Like, because that's what boundaries essentially are. So boundaries are for you. They protect you. They keep you safe, right? And they keep you safe and intact, meaning so that if you have been unwound, if you have been in a place where you weren't happy with yourself or just all over the place, boundaries keep you together. And it shows the love you have for yourself, because when you put in boundaries for other people, it shows other people how to love you. And therefore, it shows that you have a level of love for yourself, you know? And I think that it's hard. It's hard to set boundaries, but it's harder to be consistent in keeping them. And I think that's where I struggle. I can set the boundaries, but then it's hard for me to keep them. It's hard for me to make sure I'm consistent. And it depends on the who and the what, of course, but there's a level of difficulty there. And I felt that in hindsight, and sitting back and looking at how these past few months have gone, I've not been upkeeping my boundaries. And it's left me in that space of like, now I'm upset. And now I'm like, fuck all that. Like, nah, you know what I mean? And that's not going to be helpful for anybody, especially not myself. Like, I don't want to have to operate from that space. And it's not good for, you know, my dynamics and relationships. Now, some relationships and some dynamics, them get cut off, period. I ain't dealing with them again. I can't give too much because we're going to talk about that in another episode. But then there's others that's like, no, I want to keep them. So I need to figure out how to really put my boundaries in place, make the other people aware, but still in a loving way, right? Still be loving, still be present, still be engaged, and also keep that person in a loving, engaged space too, but also saying, this is a line that I don't want crossed, or these are the things I need. And I don't want anything outside of that. I feel as women, we tend to sometimes not have any boundaries because we feel it's in some way that it's wrong to have them. We have to be everything to everyone. And that ain't ever healthy for us. And we end up being in places and spaces and situations that where we are miserable. Or we tend to have them, but then we bend them, you know, to others' will. Like, oh, I said I wasn't gonna do this anymore. But if you really need me to, no. At the end of the day, you know who that's hurting? You. And as I sat there and thought about it, especially for myself, it's like, girl, you done put so much work into healing. Your boundaries were put in to keep all that healing intact. It was put in to keep me strong and in that healed space. And if you continuously weaken your boundaries or don't speak up or don't really enforce your standards, you're just weakening yourself. You're gonna end up right where you started. And I've done put too much work in to heal, to go back. And I ain't going back. So guess what? I gotta put those boundaries back in place, right? Boundaries, I feel, also help minimize access to my triggers, right? Because one, we know, well, hopefully at this point, I can speak for myself. I know what my triggers are. And some people know how to get to your triggers real good, right? And that tends to be why we put in boundaries. Someone is doing something we don't enjoy. They're doing a little bit too much, right? And it doesn't make us feel good. So we now need to put some space. Now, I know what my triggers are. I put these boundaries in place because I ain't gonna let you get there. I ain't gonna let you get me there. So therefore, let me do what's necessary to make sure that there's a level of space that you ain't gonna enter. Now, I personally, again, still learning, still growing, trying to really understand, like, if you know this, why do you keep weakening your boundaries, right? Why do you keep letting things seep in when you really shouldn't enforce that? Because now what you're doing is you're allowing someone to get closer to your triggers. Now they're going to get there and press the red button. and put you in a place and space you don't want to be. You're going to react in a way, and then now you're going to be upset at yourself, at the person, when really all you have to go, you're stepping in some ground that I'm not cool with. Can we just take a few steps back? And that's something that I'm still working on, because it's difficult. And I don't want people out here activating my triggers. Like, no, thank you. I'm good. You know what I mean? Yes, the work is in when you are triggered, how you react. But I prefer not to be triggered as much. Like, I can react to it, and I'm learning again more and more every time how to deal with my triggers when I am activated. But I'd rather just not let people activate my triggers, right? Because at that point, it's like, can you blame them? No, because you could have really did more so that they never even got to that place in space to activate those triggers. So learning to put those boundaries in place, and people just gotta adhere to those boundaries. People that care about you will respect it. They will. Those who don't give a fuck and they feel they can do what they want when they want to you are not going to respect your boundaries, and therefore should not even be in your life. And I am thankful I don't have many of those people. Still have a few, because they're not easily get riddable. But for those people, those boundaries are extra sturdy, and I don't have issues with those people. It's the ones where they fly under the radar a little bit. They might be temporary relationships, so you're not really sure how to enforce the boundaries, because you're not 100% sure how well. You don't really know them that well. You don't know how to respond, and that's what I was finding myself these past few months, kind of trying to navigate. But nah, sis, I dropped the ball on that one. I should have kept my boundaries up and not wavered on what I wanted and how I wanted it. And that's on me. I take that out and I'm learning from it. And now I'm sharing what I learned, and I can pass it on to you all. And people ain't gonna like when you put your boundaries up, right? But it's really not about that at the end of the day. It's about you. It's about your safety. It's about your mental, emotional health, and it's about your healing. And people hate when you put up boundaries, because at the end of the day, essentially what it means is they can't have access to you in the way that they want to, in the way that they used to have access to you, right? And just like what Fat Joe said, yesterday's price is not today's price. And I just find that to be so applicable when it comes to boundaries is that people, especially who've known you for a long time or a good amount of time, they feel like, oh, well, when you had your boundaries down, oh, wait, I used to be able to do this. Oh, why now I can't do that? I used to pay this price. Why now I can't pay this price? Because that was yesterday, fam. Yesterday I slipped up. Yesterday I was, for whatever reason, not upholding my boundaries. I had a slip. Today my price done went up. Today my boundaries are up, back up. Pay me a bounce. You know what I mean? And that's just what it has to be. And there's a level of fuck it in there, but it's not a fuck it of like, fuck you, I hate you, or fuck everything. It's a matter of fuck out of here. I love me. I love who I am. I love who I'm becoming. And I'm not going to allow behaviors to get me into a place I'm not cool with. And I'm not going to allow you to talk to me or treat me in a way that I'm not okay with. And that's to sustain myself. And it's about self-preservation. You know what I mean? It's not by any means necessary. I'm trying to choose the best means, but at the end of the day, it's about me. So people don't like it. They ain't gonna like it. And that's okay, because you ain't for everybody, and everybody ain't for you, and everybody ain't gonna like what you have to do. But if you're doing it for yourself and you're honoring yourself, they just gonna have to accept what it is. So for today's Connection Corner, I'm reading from the same passage, but a different paragraph that I feel sums up really addressing boundaries really, really well. It reads, when you start doing what you know is best for you, some people will be upset. They may be uncomfortable with the fact that you have the guts to be honest. They may challenge you or criticize you. You may question whether or not you are doing the right thing. It's all right. You will get over it. So will they. If they don't, perhaps it's just a sign that these are people who do not have your best interest at heart. Until today, you may have been reluctant to do what is good for you. Just for today, stand up for your highest good. Today, I am devoted to honoring what I know is good and best for me. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Oasis Podcast. I hope you were able to find something that resonated with you on your journey. Don't forget to subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts and YouTube. Rate us and leave us a review and comment on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and YouTube. Share your favorite episode and like us on Instagram and Facebook. If you have any questions, comments, want to be a guest, or any show ideas, contact us at ajaysoasis@gmail.com. That's AAYJAYSOASIS@gmail.com, or direct message us on Instagram